In this video, we're talking about the top 10 strongest, most destructive devil fruit abilities we know of right now in the One Piece world. Canon only, of course. This list is going to be independent of the user. We're just talking about the ability itself, what it could do, and how destructive we could imagine the power to be. Just so we could somewhat accurately gauge the strength of each fruit, we're going to use three categories to compare each. First is how destructive it is, next, how long is its range, and lastly, what can stop it. We're going to use these to try and make this list less biased. Now, you might think that it's going to be all Logia because of the Logia fruit's reputation of being so destructive, but watch until the end of the video because you might find it different from what you were expecting. It's gonna be fun. A little disclaimer though, this is basically my personal opinion of the power of each fruit, not dependent of the user. This is not the ultimate, most accurate list, and is very open for discussion. So, let's get right to it. Let's start with a few honorable mentions and use these as an example. First, let's talk about the Baribari no Mi, because it's one of the powers that I consider to be one of the most destructive devil fruits in the One Piece world as of right now. It's a Paramecia type that can create barriers to defend whatever the user wants to defend, or crush whatever the user wants to crush. This is such a powerful ability as it is, but we haven't seen it destroy cities, mountains, or even buildings. I'm sure this fruit can deal a decent amount of damage to anything the user wants it to hit without the user being so powerful. Somebody like Whitebeard. We haven't seen anyone really break the barrier that Bartolomeo makes, and that says a lot. Because Cavendish is said to know Haki, although we didn't really see it in the manga or in the anime, this might be the most unique fruit, considering that a Haki user in Cavendish wasn't able to break the barrier that Bartolomeo made. The Baribari no Mi seems to have a pretty good range because Bartolomeo was able to create a ladder made of the barrier up to the flower field. We haven't seen anything stop this fruit yet, but with other fruits that clearly can cause more devastation, we put it here as an honorable mention. Next, we have the Miramiranomi. This one is pretty controversial, but I believe it's with good reason. We all know that Logias possess so much destructive force. I tried to be as unbiased as I could, so I had to consider the feats that you could do with all the fruits that really struck me with their destructive power. And really, this fruit is so strong, it could rival the power of the Hiya no Mi, which is why I found it so hard to put together this top 10 list. But I truly believe that the 10 powers that made it in are that strong. Anyway, the fruit lets you conjure up fire, and we saw that with the Miramiranomi, you could destroy wooden ships so easily, as demonstrated by Ace back in the Arabasta arc when he crushed the Billion's fleet. And this fruit can definitely clear massive waves of enemies, which is why it was the one fruit I put in and out of the list the most. But I think there are a lot of fruits that overpower or stop it. The Hiya no Mi for one, and another right off the top of my head is the Magu no Mi. Anyway, the range on the Miramiranomi is pretty decent because Ace managed to sink 5 ships that were decently spaced from one another with one fire fist. Moving on, we have the Ishi no Mi. I believe that in terms of destructiveness, even thinking that this is a Paramecia type, this fruit is right up there. Considering the user can just transform himself to the biggest stone monster that he could and crush whole cities with one punch. I think the fruit has some serious limitations and is totally dependent on the rocks in your surroundings. But the range on this fruit is godly, and the sheer power is unbelievable. Now, I believe that there are a lot of fruits that could overpower the Ishi no Mi, like the Magu no Mi and the Guraguranomi. Also, the fruit of Gladius, the Pamu no Mi, and so on. Which is why I only put it along with the other honorable mentions. Speaking of which, I was really considering the Pamu no Mi, but I kinda think that Mr. Five's Bomu no Mi might be better than that. Both are Paramecia types, and I think that the Bomu no Mi might be a bit stronger than the Pamu Pamu no Mi, especially if the user awakens the fruit, making it affect the surroundings of the user like the Pamu Pamu no Mi does, except with more destructive force. But next, we have a weird one, but hear me out. This is just a bonus one, and it's the Numa Numa no Mi. It's Caribou's fruit, and it's a Logia that I had been considering for a long time, given what I thought about the fruit's potential. But the fruit basically makes the user's body a bottomless swamp. The idea that I had in mind was that if the fruit was awakened, the user could make a flash flood with it. If you can't use Geppo or you can't jump high, you're doomed. Imagine sticky water at high speeds and bottomless amounts of it rushing right at you. You can't really fight that unless you ate the Bari Bari no Mi, some top tier devil fruit, or if you're Goku. But in any case, get ready because we are now moving on to the top 10. Starting it off at number 10 is the very cutely named Necunicu no Mi. Yes, it's a paramecia type that I put on the list because it allows the user, regardless of the user's strength, to deflect anything. It can deflect fire, possibly Kizaru's lasers, almost anything. We haven't seen it tested against the Haki users, but I would imagine that Haki can bust through that. But you won't need to get hit by a Haki user if you can just repel yourself to another location. But anyway, not really the point of this list, so we're going back. The destructive power that this fruit possesses is pretty high on its own because we've seen Kuma compress air and shoot it out, and it became a huge bomb that detonated in a very large area. It takes a lot of time to do that, which is why it's only number 10 on the list. We haven't seen the range of the Ursa's shock, but Kuma was able to send the Straw Hats flying to other parts of the One Piece world, making me think that it could be pretty long. Now we have the Sorosorumi. This one I had to put pretty low because if we're thinking about the Sorosorumi in Mother Carmel's possession, she wasn't really able to use it as a weapon. Which made me think if Zeus and Prometheus are the result of Big Mom's soul being in them, then it might not be the case if Mother Carmel did it. But regardless, we know about the soul focus and how it can sap the lifespan away from its victims. And as long as the target has the smallest shred of fear, the soul focus can do its magic, which we've seen affect multiple targets at once. With the addition of giving a part of the user's soul to anything, you could create an army and use the sun or the lightning clouds to cause so much destruction in an area. The biggest downside to the fruit, I think, aside from not being able to swim, obviously, is the range you can use the fruit in. Yes, Zeus and Prometheus have a very wide, effective range to it, but the Sorosoranomi itself seems to have a very limited range. Now we're moving on and we get pulled in by the Yami Yaminomi, the only Logia type fruit that doesn't make the user's body fluid. It drags everything in and makes the user take so much damage. I actually wanted to put it higher on the list, but I settled for it here at number 8 because I think it's strong in battle, but it's not as destructive as the other fruits that made it higher on this list. Not to say that the Yami Yami no Mi has little destructive power, we saw it in action against Ace in Banalo Island, and it was used to easily destroy the city that was built there, and it can definitely take out a big wave of enemies in one go. The range on this thing is pretty big, but we haven't seen it used in a long range battle. We don't know what can stop the Yami Yami no Mi yet, and I'm thinking that the fruit on this list is its direct elemental weakness. Anyway, with the Yami Yami no Mi, Blackbeard was able to take control of another devil fruit in the Guraguranomi. With that in mind, it's pretty awesome, but it doesn't directly contribute to how destructive the fruit is, the range of it, and what could stop it. I know that it can be a controversial thing for me to say, and it did freeze me a little bit. But now we're talking about the Hiya Hiya no Mi. Another Logia type, I know, surprising, right? The Hiya Hiya no Mi turns the user's body into ice and is able to rival the Magu Magu no Mi, which is definitely a big feat. This fruit seems to have been awakened seeing how it can easily affect the surrounding area when Aokiji uses it, and it can even stop tsunamis. The range on this thing is insane, considering Aokiji was able to connect one island to another while freezing the whole ocean along with it. At first glance, it seems less destructive than some of the other powers that we've talked about, or the ones that we will be talking about, because it freezes the things that it comes in contact with instead of destroying them. But given how devastating freezing a whole person's body is, and using this ability on buildings, ships, tanks, you name it, the freezing will do an amazing job at stopping everything in its tracks, leaving these things to ruin. And it could even reach everything that you can see and further, which is why we have it on number 7. The next one might shock you, and it's the Hito no Mi. No, not that one, this one. Model Daibutsu. It's the only zone type fruit that I put on this list. And like any other zone type fruit, it boosts the physical attributes of the user. Now, why did I put the Hito no Mi Model Daibutsu on this list? Because we've seen its force. The shockwaves that Sengoku was able to produce was strong enough to deflect a shot of the Guraguranomi. I'm not sure if I should say anything else, because if that doesn't convince you that this power should be on this list, then I don't know what can. We obviously haven't seen the full extent of this fruit's power and range, but I'm assuming it's pretty far and very strong. It could surely take care of waves of enemies, just like how Sengoku crushed all the members of Blackbeard's crew in one shockwave. It could obviously be stopped by the Guraguranomi, and I assume some other powers in this list as well. If you think time flies by so fast, then the next power is even faster. It's the Pika Pikami, another Logia that makes the user's body sparkle. It's strong enough to break all the ice that Aokiji made, and we've seen it destroy a big area, as well as the Yarukiman mangroves in the Sabodi archipelago. The range is pretty awesome. It was also able to reach how many meters deep in the ocean when Kizaru was trying to hit Lost Sub? We're not even considering the speed of these, which is one of the best things about the fruit. It's insane. I'm not sure how many characters in the One Piece world could dodge these, but I would imagine not a lot. Anyway, I think this is the elemental weakness of the Yami no Mi, given its light versus darkness, which should be about equal, but it could definitely do a lot more damage than the Yami no Mi. Now, we have the Gorogoronomi, which I believe to be stronger than the Pika Pikami, which are pretty similar. The fruit makes the user's body into electricity and is definitely fitting of making the top 5 powers. But the destructive force of the Gorogoronomi was referenced to possibly be the most destructive power among all the Logia fruits. It has pretty godly range and can bring down a city, and the electricity can travel further into the water, which can potentially roast anyone and anything in contact with it. I can imagine the Gorogoronomi accomplishing any feat that the Miramiranomi could accomplish, but with much more destructiveness to it. I placed it at number 4 on this list, despite it being called the most destructive power, because it has a hard time dealing with the earth which was in Shandia. Which is why I was really considering putting the Ishi no Mi on this list, because I feel like it could be a weakness of the Gorogoronomi. I was also thinking about how Pikachu was weak against Onyx. So that logic worked out well, obviously. Anyway, our discussion gets heated with number 3 on the list, because we're now talking about the Magu no Mi, the last Logia type fruit on this list. I believe the Magma to be more destructive considering how it doesn't really have too many weaknesses except maybe the Hiya no Mi, and not a lot of things could stop it. But in terms of destruction, in my eyes, it's definitely in the top 4 and not a spot lower. It can easily deal with ice, burn anything it comes in contact with, and can be fired off at pretty long distances. It can even melt the ground and will surely be able to clear out crowds. And it was able to equal a shot of the Guraguranomi, which is why it's right here on number 3. And if that reason doesn't work out for you, you can always go back to the Punk Hazard arc and check how Punk Hazard is doing. The conversation gets heavier as we talk about the Zushi no Mi. This is Fujitora's devil fruit and it's a paramecia type that allows the user to manipulate gravity. This fruit is OP. It's so overpowered that the user can bring down a meteor to his targeted location. The fruit is that strong. And just imagine if Fujitora decides to drop another planet in the One Piece world, if there are any. It can potentially destroy the whole One Piece world. Other abilities that the user could do is push out gravity onto an area, which can seriously damage even mountains, levitate and drop the remains of cities on an area, and so on. Just imagine if Fujitora is the main protagonist of One Piece and we're in the Wano arc. It's going to be like the Age of Extinction. He's going to drop meteors and the dinosaurs go bye-bye. And lastly, at number 1, I'm sure you all guessed it, it's the Guraguranomi, the strongest fruit in the One Piece world, regardless of the user's power. It's another paramecia type fruit that can produce quakes. It can create tsunamis, which can obviously take out a whole island, and it could create earthquakes that could possibly destroy the whole world. I placed it on top of the Zushi no Mi simply because I believe there's no way that Fujitora could destroy the world if he wanted to, if Whitebeard was protecting it. There are a lot of powers that can deal with small shots from the Guraguranomi, but I doubt that most of them can destroy the whole world. So, that wraps up today's video. It was a lot of fun thinking about these. I didn't realize there were so many fruits in the One Piece lore until I really thought about it, which made it so hard to decide which goes to what position and if this is accurate enough. But anyway, crush the like button like you're using the Guraguru no Mi, and comment down below what power you would like to have if devil fruits were real, and why. And lastly, if you love One Piece, subscribe to the channel so that the channel could grow, and smash the notification bell, because on the next video, if the newest chapter doesn't get translated yet, we're making a top 10 list of the Zoan fruits, just to give it some love. It's gonna be fun, stay safe, peace.